Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Leadership in Politics with Dr. Abraham. On the show with me today is Mike Vacanti. Mike, welcome to the show. Welcome to Leadership in Politics.
Thank you. It's a thrill to be here with you, and I really appreciate you having me with you today.
Of course, it's my pleasure to have you. I've been following some of the work you've done, especially your book, Believership. Who is Mike Vacanti?
I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is where I grew up, spent most of my time. I went to school here at the University of Minnesota and Colorado College. I've gone on to raise 5 adult children now.
Nice.
And many different career iterations through that time. I started out in our family sporting goods business. I went into marketing and advertising for 13 years, had my own firm for a while during that time, and then stumbled into technology and launched a unified communications platform right before the internet bubble burst of the turn of the century, 2000. Being enough, it's at the time period that Amazon launched during, but so many concepts that were inventive at the time. It was a crazy money flow into companies that really didn't have any thought of monetization. It was just getting eyeballs to their platform. And I look 20 years later now, and that eyeballs to platform certainly is its own business model.
Yeah. Because they didn't teach you that before.
Correct.
You had 20 years to learn that.
Yeah.
That's very true. Well, that's nice to know. So you're based now in Minnesota. That's your base now.
Yes.
What do you do now currently? Because you've done too many things in the past. What do you do now at this moment?
Right. Currently, I'm working with companies, sometimes doing workshops around leadership, or innovation on demand is one of the programs. What I really love to spend my time with is I'm working with executive teams in problem solving. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of that work behind the scenes because experiences going through 5 different mergers and acquisitions, it brought up a lot of the challenges and understanding chaos, being able to make clear-headed decisions during those times. And so I really enjoy that problem-solving position, but also being in groups of people and leading them through the discovery of changing their minds, reviewing and experimenting with new ideas, pulling people together to have a uniform view. So a lot of my work, and it's in the book as well, is based around that genuineness, awareness, vision, and belief. It's really how you show up. Are you aware of the surroundings? Do you see where you're going, and can you get there?
So basically, you're in the awakening movement or drive to make people, hey guys, there are different line of thinking out there. There's forward thinking. You're working on the mindset.
Working on the mindset a lot, and what's very fun, and I love to explore with you because you teach people to think differently and to look, and as an educator like that, and a leadership mentor, we know that if we get stuck on a model and just become good at applying a model that itself is not working well, that we're really spinning our wheels.
Instead of wasting time. The mindset, you can teach it. We're not born with it. Some people are gifted at picking up things quickly and moving ahead, and some you have to train them further.
Yes.
But even to stay within the status quo, that's something we can change. It doesn't have to stay there all the time. Because when you work on changing the belief system of others or making them think differently or behave, because when they think differently, they will behave differently, work accordingly within the norms of the organization. But the status quo, to maintain its status quo for stability, it's something we choose, people within leadership, for one reason, to leave the status quo as is, so stability is maintained, because they don't want to have a chaotic environment.
I agree with that very much, and I think what follows with that then is capitulation to things that may or may not be good. There's a simulation that is necessary, and much of that is done through force and control. rather than by inviting in choice. And I really think that's a big difference is when people choose on their own, they willfully commit to the journey and the challenges that they'll face.
That's true. So I think the enforcement of a culture or a norm is necessary because we see it everywhere. We see it within the law system, like when you enforce the vehicle regulations. These are model learned through the years. This works now, may not work next year or the year after due to trial and error.
Yeah.
So really the enforcement of it or even the forcing of a tradition or a norm within a culture is very much necessary to just make it a law or make it a norm. And then people will adapt to it and it becomes their own ritual.
I think boundaries are extremely important. And when people understand them and know where they are, it's pretty hard to keep a river flowing without the banks of the river.
True.
And I really
these
think,
are the regulations.
yes,
These are the regulations. These are what maintain the river, the water within the river banks.
it does, yes, and allows then the the current to move. And we know in raising children, boundaries are actually how they understand that they're loved because somebody cared enough to create parameters for them, and then we see that when they're teenagers, they feel it's their job to push every one of those boundaries or explore and discover. And I think that is human nature, but without those boundaries, I think people just don't feel cared for, and so there's oftentimes they feel constrictive, but I think as you're putting them to us, it makes a lot of sense that they're actually constructive, not destructive.
They're constructive to a limit. That's very true. So your work on believership, which I'm going to put it on the screen, Mike?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's Believership, the superpower beyond leadership. This is volume 1. So we expect 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
3 are planned. I'm writing number 2 right now. So this is the experience, and
What kind of experience is it?
so it's kind of how I came to this term believership, and it sets the premise for what is it in a terms of leadership? What is this? And the experience was I've been in business. I've had many different experiences that's shaped views around leadership that I experienced or that I stepped into when I was in a leadership role within companies, and then how I see the necessity to change some of our views on leadership to set up for the future that's going to be more challenging, I believe, than the past. And I can explain that a little bit.
Give me also, in addition to that, get me into the premise of the book. Give me like precise details of the premise of the book. What made you write it? I understand the term believe is there, but you kind of put believership as a new and coined word. That's your own, right? That's something you put together. So give me the premise. Why believership? Are you creating a tribe? What are you creating? What are you trying to make?
So what I believe is that we've been teaching leadership in a way that is not serving our communities, not really even serving our businesses to the degrees that we can. That we've over the centuries we've adopted models of leadership, and I start the book referring back to Max Weber, and so I just took the 100 years of the Industrial Revolution.
So you talked about bureaucracy here because he coined bureaucracy as we know it.
Yes, and so then all the way through to the elaborations on that, and then even Druckerism, which was very management focused. I mean, Peter Drucker was brilliant, right? In his writings, and his teachings are great. However, he, in his work, turned leadership into a synonym of management. It was about the orchestrated, prescriptive orchestration, the prescriptive management of every element. So there's really an enhancement of bureaucracy in many ways. And when we come into this new era of business that I believe we're entering into, that is very technology driven and not industrial driven, I think that the workforce changes to a great degree. And I believe that we're also entering a time that is going to bring more rapid and more significant change in a shorter period of time than we've experienced before. And our old leadership models just don't bend enough to set up success for those people that need to go down that path.
Because the time running so fast, and technology and the digital age we're in now, even information age, really you can't distinguish anymore between what era we're in. Either information age, suddenly we're in the digital age, suddenly it's like something else has happened. There's the speed we're getting into these eras. It needs leadership to act fast as well. It's like, because if you don't, first, competition is going to take over and will defeat you in your own game. Second is, what are you doing? How come you're not ahead?
Right. And we see the companies that, I mean, there's examples where companies are in the lead and they just can't sustain. Who would have ever thought, Sears with, they have a Discover card, right? And insurance and then the stores. And you would never see that they would tumble the way they have because they had a little bit of diversity in them.
Because they stayed behind. They didn't merge with time. They didn't advance with time. They stayed homogeneous where we needed a heterogeneous environment. You see it in the front. You see with Sears, you see it probably in the front, like the customer service and what you see with the public, but management-wise, stagnated.
Yes.
They stayed in the old days. That's why they failed.
Yes. We know that there's a degree of protectionism in there, which is natural, right? If you build up something that's operating and working well, if you build up even a strong society, then the propensity is going to be to protect that as is. And the risk of innovating and opening up some cracks in a process or a system that's working feels very vulnerable. And it's not vulnerability that many leaders are ready to step into. And those are new muscles. I think that's what I'm encouraging is I think we need to add some new thinking and mindsets to leadership. We also need to add some new rhythms and new muscles to that whole system.
Believership, does it provide such steps how to do it?
So my primary focus in the book is when we put the emphasis on people, that people will grow and one of the statements in the book is, given the opportunity, people will amaze you. And I think that we for so many years, certainly during all the theories of the Industrial Revolution, people are treated as cogs, that you have a function, we can measure the output for those hours worked. And I don't believe that we're in a punch clock world anymore. And by putting limitations on people's capacity, we've actually squished the opportunity down for companies to grow. And the way to grow that is to build that human capacity by really investing in the growth of people and their personal journey, rather than just treating them as human capital or a resource. And so it's very human based.
So basically you're more toward making sure the employees are part of the equation.
Yes.
Part of the equation, and they are considered for their feedback, for their contributions, and for the opportunities. You give them opportunities along the way. How do you flourish? How do you flourish the opportunities within such environments? How do you do it?
Well, I believe that individual learning becomes really important. So when a person is going through their own maturity process and their own growth process, 20 years old or 30 years old or 30, whatever the age frame is, our understanding in our life changes. And so if each individual can be on their learning and they're growing in all facets of their life and learning what interests them, they become much more fully productive people. They become satisfied in other areas of their life that they may not get by doing the accounting job. But if they're able to, and encouraged to read and learn and educate on their other interests while they're doing the accounting job, the company that's taking them along that journey will actually benefit from that. Instead of just getting another accounting certificate or, learning more about their specific craft and keeping them, very much into a narrow rut.
So you're advocating for developing the employees along the way, either giving them education or putting them in a certain program or give them special courses of development, personal self-development, because when they gain that knowledge and know-how, they'll bring it back to the office environment, and the employer and in the office and the organization will benefit from.
I fully believe that. And, I'll give one example of putting humans first, or putting the employee development first is, if I am working for you, Abraham, and I am a dedicated employee, and I'm enjoying working for you, and now I get to that point in my life where I start having children, and my wife and I have, we now have our first little child, and you're saying, Mike, your job is to be my, operations officer, and I need you focused on, operational excellence and keep learning around operational excellence. And I'm going to tell you, I think that is also very important to me. I will grow along that path, but at this time in my life, I need to learn more about parenting, because that part of my life is new. I'm not very good or even aware of it. And so can I use this year of my learning dollars, my learning time, to learn about parenting, to learn about schools, to learn about society?
So I, as an employer in this case, learning from you, I would say yes.
Ah,
I would say yes. I would say, yeah, because your priorities have changed now. You have different priorities.
right.
And if I am a mindful leader, I would put myself in your position instead of just considering the benefits of the organization, because you're committed to the employment of this company. And I happen to be a mindful leader. If I wasn't a mindful leader, I would say, no, you have to go whatever it is, or you can find another job. But if I am mindful enough to understand what are your priorities, I will meet them, I'll feed your needs, I will motivate you to commit to the company further. And then in return, when you achieve what you achieve, you and your family going to be loyal to the company because we stood next to you during this time.
I believe that to be true. And I believe that it points back to an area that has gone away in the employer transaction is loyalty. And I think that people feel it's a big mystery, and we still have, depending on the research, 70% of the employee base is disengaged by those measures of engagement. And somehow that's become satisfactory. And I just believe we can do a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have 50% engagement or 70% engagement? We have the ability to change that dial. It's not that everybody that goes to work during the day suddenly lost their mind. We have an opportunity to change the way we think about that relationship.
So engagement, how would you approach it? Would be through incentives? What model would we use?
I think a lot of it comes down to relationships. I really, and again, you'll see me go toward that human element. But we've put in, brilliant employee management systems, HCM, human capital management systems. There's the biggest software companies in the world are doing that with a research base. And I think, again, we spend a lot of time surveying people, which is probably what people, like the least of all things. and we don't really share the information back. So certainly people respond to what's rewarded. And if what is rewarded is the value to the relationships that you're growing inside the company, I think that really changes that intrinsic value, the value of belonging, the value of being appreciated. I think in many cases outweighs that 3% raise you might get at the end of the year.
The performance. Let me take you to another scenario. During COVID, how do you maintain the engagement with the employees? What do you advise leaders? What's your advice to them?
The big advice has been to make sure that you change your meeting rhythms. So everybody's working from home. That's set, and it raises a new set of unknowns, a new set of challenges. But when we believe in our employees, and as a leader, if we believe in our teams, we believe that they are doing their work, that they care about the outcome of the objective, and that they understand there's an obligation for the compensation that they're receiving, that for the paycheck they're getting. So we get into rhythms when we're in a physical environment and how we have our meetings and even what we discuss in the meeting. And since everything else changed, what I saw happen often with companies is they just would keep the same meeting structure, only they would go to a digital format. So we get together on Zoom and walk through the same agenda that they did when they were live, and the dynamic was completely different. So they tried to revert to a different format without understanding that the whole paradigm shifted and they needed to go to a different rhythm, and people hadn't adjusted to that transition well enough. And so if I'm sitting with you today now and we're just going to go through, Mike, I read the report of all the things you've done this past week. What I'd like you to do is look me in the eye through this camera and tell me all those things I read once again. And so you can't micromanage digitally, and I think people have tried.
So you have to work with it. What else do you want to talk? Do you have like advices to leaders only or everybody?
So I start pushing it down to, if you wanted to be involved with great leadership, then self-leadership becomes very important. So instead of always pointing and saying, we have bad leadership and change will never happen and we can't do that, I'm very strongly advocating that don't play the blame game. Do not make yourself small. This is a chance for self-leadership, and you have accountability. Employee engagement is 100% the responsibility of the employee. Creating an environment for that employee to be engaged is 100% on
the responsibility of the employer,
of the company.
So it takes two to tango. It's mutual respect, mutual commitment on both parts.
Yeah.
How do you put this mindset with the employees?
I think they have to understand they have choice. And when I say understand they have choice, we certainly know that we get to choose when we get out of bed in the morning, we get to choose our attitude for the day, and even if we're dealing with difficult things, there is a mindset, there are choices we have at every moment in it. And sometimes people feel that as soon as I step into an environment that they're not personally controlling, then all of a sudden the victim mindset kicks in, and it's everybody else's fault, and it's all the outside conditions. And what I advocate is remind yourself that you have choices. And so how you respond to every conversation, how you respond to challenges, even if it's a psychological challenge from somebody you have a conflict with. You always have the chance to grow and mature and learn and respond. So with that, the understanding of choices then empowers the individual to self-lead. And what we learn is that the influencer in a group is not always the person with the authority. It's the person
The loud one.
that people depend on the most. And sometimes that's even the quiet one. And you,
Yeah, true. The loud one sometimes takes the credit for something he hasn't done.
yes.
Yeah.
And when you look around a conference room table, oftentimes the loud one, everybody is just waiting for that person to stop talking. And
Okay, so let's stop here. How come they don't have the strength and the courage to say, just shut the hell up. Just don't say it anymore. Why don't they say it? Out of respect, they know better. He's gonna attack them back. What is it?
yeah, I would love to think it's respect. I actually think it's fear. So there's a belief of consequence if they push into that conflict. And that's where great leadership comes in is understanding the room, understanding the dynamics of the organization, and just don't force that type of situation. Let people know that raise your voice, and you can be we might not accept your idea. You might even be wrong, but you're voicing your ideas is something we will bring to the table and discuss. And it just hasn't been taught well enough for people to feel comfortable with that. I have worked with companies, and over a very quick, 6 week to 3 month period of time, they learn those rhythms. We create that psychological safety, which was a term that was very foreign to me. Matter of fact, I was resistant to it when I started into this. But emotional intelligence and psychological safety are two tools that can totally change an environment and put people on a growth path. And they're not these, scary, soft, squishy tools. They're actually, these are good things to learn to deal with family members and
Master your environment. You need to have them, whether at work or at home. You need to be emotionally intelligent. You need to have some level of comfort personally. Because if you have self-doubts, you're not going to reach any level. There is a fear of you voicing out. There's a fear of you thinking people are going to think, what is he saying? Laugh at you or otherwise. So the safety, you call it psychological safety, which I agree with, but you need a comfort zone to operate from at least.
right.
And that comfort zone, it doesn't come unless either a facilitator within an organization in a meeting or the leadership set the norms that every voice here is appreciated, respected. Your feedback is looked at with the most respect, and we appreciate you for it.
Yeah.
But not all organizations like this. And I hope a show like this and a book like yours will change the mindset to make people empowered to work on developing these employees to the betterment for their organization and betterment of our society.
Thank you. One of the things I believe, Aaron, and I say is that I'm very much more interested in becoming better than being right. And so I wrote this book really, these are the experiences I had that, made successful journeys through 5 different mergers and acquisitions, leading big teams. I didn't really know why that was different. So I went back and researched what were people's experiences during that. And again, I'm proposing, if we understand that we can do better and we're looking ahead to say, how can we improve? We can shape our leadership models from the basis that we're starting at, each one of us. And it doesn't have to be one particular method, which is why I use the term believership, because how many books do we have available to us that are some adjective leadership? It's, here's servant leader or brave leader or aware leader, or just about every adjective we can go through the English language and put in front of it. We have that book available. And what I'm saying is, I don't think it's so much the traits and characteristics and persona of the leader itself. Matter of fact, we've created models, idyllic models that no longer serve us or have been flawed fables at the beginning. And instead, when people believe in the values, the vision, the mission, or the person, they'll do amazing things. And every successful leader did it because others willfully committed and moved well along their side.
I like that. Tell me, what's the exclusive we have for the audience today?
My real goal, it has always been to get the book into people's hands to read. There's not enough money in books to, unless you're, #1 bestseller, which I'm certainly not.
Let's hope it will become after the show.
Thank you, thank you. So I really, I want to encourage people to understand they have the power within them to change their mind. And so what I would like to do is, these books that I have available, I would like to offer them to your listeners for $5.
Okay.
And they can message you. They can
let's have them contact you directly. How can they do it?
Please just get a hold of me. mjvacanti.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn very easily. I think those two methods are very.
So they go to the website, Mike. They go to the website. Do you have like a contact form?
Yes.
So they contact form, and then they say they saw this interview, and they're interested in the $5 offer, and then they go from there.
And I will sign the book for them, and
it's a signed copy for $5. Nobody can get better deal than this. So generous. That's definitely so generous, Mike. At least what you're doing is you're providing your insight at a low cost, so at least it covers some of your expenses. But the value they're going to get is priceless. The value of this, what the contents of your book, is priceless. So they will benefit from it. And $5 is just a very minimum contribution to the little offset some of the cost you had.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you saying that. I am a first-time author, and so I didn't know what to expect from feedback as the book rolled out. And it's been humbling and overwhelming, from college professors to business leaders and many other authors actually that have really stepped in to support.
That's wonderful. I hope this show is in that line. We're supporting you, Mike. We are on your corner. Whatever you do, I am with you.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to number 2 and number 3. And then after this, you're going to put the human experience, because these are human experiences.
Thank you. I believe that it does center back on taking care of each other, caring enough about each other to take care of each other. So there's an element of love in there. I think love does become a business word. And also that then is personal integrity and responsibility, not just for ourselves, but it changes the give-get equation, that if we learn to give first, the getting becomes so much more rewarding.
I heard compassion. The word compassion or compassionate leadership are people who give without expecting anything in return. So if we can reach that level of having people in society that are compassionate, whether leaders or even citizens, just to help each other and be of service to others, that will be a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes, it's our great opportunity now, isn't it?
It is. It actually, especially during this time.
Yes.
Serving others is the most admired thing a human being can do. To reach your full potential as a human being, serve another human being. Doesn't matter how much money you have, what education you have, is how you serve others sincerely without expecting anything in return. Then you would reach your potential. Mike.
So wise, and it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, for being part of it.
It's a great joy for me, and I'm really honored to get a chance to be with you and the audience.
Likewise.
I want people to know that I'm on your side, I'm on their side, that this is really about them finding their path forward with that confidence and belief.
Excellent. The name of the book is Believership. The author, Mike Vacanti. Mike, thank you so much.
It was just a great joy, and I can't wait for our next opportunity.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in today.